Allora, buonasera a tutti, grazie per aver accolto l'invito del Centro Studi Martino Martini per questo incontro che parla del protestantesimo in Cina, che è stato organizzato dalla professoressa Graziani. È con noi una ricercatrice che viene da Parigi, Juliette Dulery, che vi parlerà in maniera ampia di questo argomento. Passo la parola alla professoressa Graziani.
Due parole, grazie Marcella per la coorganizzazione dell'incontro. È di fatto questo il quarto, alcuni di voi, visto che ci sono studenti del dottorato alla Scuola di Studi Internazionali, anche alcune mie studentesse di cultura cinese, è il quarto incontro che teniamo abbiamo iniziato da 2 anni, da quando sono qua, diciamo che ho curato un po' sulle religioni in Cina, e in particolare con un focus particolare sulle religioni straniere, diciamo di origine straniera, che sono penetrate in Cina. E il tema di oggi è appunto un tema di fatto importante, anche di grande attualità, perché riguarda appunto, è un tema che diciamo sicuramente di grande attualità perché sappiamo che negli ultimi anni è cresciuto moltissimo il numero dei cristiani in Cina. C'è stata anche una enorme diffusione, insomma un aumento considerevole una diffusione piuttosto significativa del protestantesimo, quindi nel contesto cinese, in un contesto che, come sappiamo, ha visto da un lato le comunità cristiane andare incontro a un restringimento degli spazi di autonomia, e nell'era di Xi Jinping anche, diciamo, una spinta verso una spinta, diciamo, voluta dalle autorità governative verso quella che chiamiamo la sinificazione aggiungo qua delle religioni. E chiaramente un processo, quello di significazione delle religioni in Cina, che assume particolare rilevanza se pensiamo appunto a una religione considerata straniera, appunto come il protestantesimo, no? Il cristianesimo e il protestantesimo. A parlare oggi con noi abbiamo Juliette Dulery, il cui intervento è appunto dedicato alle attività degli evangelici nella Cina contemporanea, alla diffusione quindi del protestantesimo e all'influenza esercitata dai gruppi evangelici transnazionali provenienti quindi dal mondo sinico, e quindi pensiamo a Hong Kong, Taiwan, alla diaspora più in generale, appunto nella diffusione di delle missioni evangeliche. Juliette Dulery è una dottoranda di Parigi, dell'Università di Parigi, che è specializzata nel campo, diciamo, della sociologia politica, si occupa di questi temi e sta svolgendo appunto un dottorato su questi aspetti, e ha svolto già un periodo molto lungo, diversi periodi di fieldwork in Cina tra il 2017-2019, raccogliendo 80 interviste e anche svolgendo quindi la partecipazione, l'osservazione partecipante come metodo di ricerca. Io lascerei appunto la parola a Juliette e devo sottolineare anche il fatto che è stata da noi da ottobre all'Università di Trento come visiting student alla Scuola di Studi Internazionali, e ho il piacere appunto abbiamo il piacere di ascoltarla oggi sui temi della sua ricerca. Grazie. Thank you. L'intervento sarà in inglese, scusate la mia introduzione in italiano. Thank you very much for your... thank you.
Okay, so hi everybody. So today I'm going to talk about the role of Protestant businessmen in the current spread of Christianity in China. So I would like to start by showing you this picture. So it's a picture of a clothing shop located in Shenzhen, which is a town in China at the border of Hong Kong. And it's the first special economic zone of China after the opening up of China. So it's a very prosperous city. And on the front of this clothing shop, you can see a cross, biblical verse, and also a Hallelujah logo. So since the years 2000, so in the years 2000, the director of an American evangelical organization came to this shop and ordained the head of this clothing shop, elder, which is a religious position often attributed to businessmen in China. So you can see that this shop has religious attributes, and each Sunday there is the Sunday service conducted in this shop, and also various religious activities. This is why this shop is also a church, and I call this place a church company. So the rise of this church company takes place in the broader rise of Protestantism in China. So nowadays there are 58 million of Protestants in China, so it accounts for 4.4% of the population. So according to some serious surveys, China is nowadays the third Protestant country worldwide, behind the United States and Nigeria. So this is mainly due to the large size of the Chinese population. This expansion is due in part to foreign evangelical groups. So worldwide evangelical have an aim to Christianize China. Because of Chinese economic growth, China is seen as a privileged missionary field. So what is...
Can you stay a bit more close to the microphone?
Okay. Yeah. So what is the evangelical movement? So the evangelical movement is a branch of Christianity that emerged in the United States in the 1960s. It is based on fundamentalism, so it's a conservative religious movement, not in a political sense, but in a religious sense, which means that it is based on a literal understanding of the Bible, and also on an emphasis placed on evangelization. So I argue in this presentation that the main promoters of Protestantism in China are transnational businessmen. So by transnational, I mean that they usually come from Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Chinese diasporas abroad, so in the United States mainly. And what is interesting is that foreign groups in China are prohibited to evangelize or lead local churches. So why? Because in China there is 5 authorized religions which are controlled by the state. So these religions are Buddhism, Taoism, Catholicism, Protestantism, and Islam. But Christianity is it's still negatively perceived by the state more than the other religion, because it is linked to the semi-colonization of China in the 19th century by foreign forces during the Opium Wars. More importantly, Protestantism nowadays is still seen as a threat for the regime, because it is likely to bring Western values in China, such as democracy. So it is true that Christianity has helped to overthrow authoritarian regime in the past. So for example, in the dismantling of the USSR, Catholicism played an important role. So the Chinese state applied a policy of anti-infiltration against Christian groups. In China, the Protestant landscape is thus divided between 3 self-churches, which are state-led and legal churches, and a lot of churches in China don't agree with this institutional supervision by the Chinese state. So believers gather in the houses, and there is a lot of underground and semi-legal churches. So since the arrival of Xi Jinping to power, there is new regulations on religion that are more restrictive than before, and also a call to sinicize religion. Religion like Protestantism, which is seen as a foreign religion, is thus seen as a harm to Chinese civilization, according to this nationalist discourse. There are concrete consequences of this tightening. Underground churches are more and more closing in China. And maybe you have heard of the re-education camps in Xinjiang province. Nowadays, more than 1 million of people from the Uyghur Muslim population are held in re-education camps in this province. And this also has an impact on Christian churches in this province, which some of the pastors are also held in this camp. So except from this particular case, in general, state churches are ordered to raise the Chinese flag in their buildings in order to show that they are patriotic to the state. So here you can see a picture of Shaolin Monastery, which is a very famous monastery in China, and they are holding this Chinese flag. Also, minors are now restricted to participate in churches' activities, so especially in the Sunday school, which is the equivalent to the catechism in Catholicism. And Bibles are forbidden to be sold outside of the churches. So the aim of the state is not to eradicate religions as a whole, but rather to make Protestantism disappear from the public space. So for example, underground churches in China, it is still okay to lead an underground church if you have less than 25 members. But the regime will tackle especially underground churches that are very visible, that are important, and that are also openly critical of the regime. But if you are discreet in the public space and you don't cause any problem to the state, you can still exist. So this is also a picture of evangelical movement in the United States. So it's to show you that evangelicals use very modern tools to evangelize. So here you can see an evangelical concert in the United States. And also these movements are linked to political regimes, such as the one of Donald Trump in the United States or Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil. So it's movements that also have a political agenda. And since the new restrictions, there are concrete also crackdowns on churches in China. But not all the churches are cracked down like this. It's still specific cases. So the question I want to address in this presentation is the following. So based on which motivation do evangelical businessmen promote the gospel in China in this context of state surveillance? So various researchers before have shown that there is a link between Protestantism and business. So for example, there is the classical study of Max Weber about Puritans in the United States in the 17th century. So since they have Protestant ethic, they will practice business more easily. And in China, there is also a new emphasis placed on moral norms since the opening up of China. After the communist regime of Mao Zedong, people feel kind of moral void, so they are seeking new moral and religious values. Confucianism also, for some researchers, is seen as a state religion in China. So it's also the state which encourages the use of moral values in Chinese societies. So for example, this poster that you can see everywhere in the streets in China is a propaganda poster which promotes filial piety, which is a Confucian concept. So it says that filial piety is the lifeblood of the Chinese people. So it shows the importance of Confucianism for the state in order to legitimate the state for Chinese people, to Chinese people. So I'm basing myself on fieldworks that I conducted during my PhD. So first I went in Taiwan for 3 months, then in Hong Kong for 2 months, and in mainland China, so in Shenzhen, Changsha, and Beijing for 3 months, to interview more than 100 Protestant leaders, so mainly businessmen and pastors, and also believers. So here you can see that Shenzhen is really at the border of Hong Kong. So it's really a platform to spread Protestantism inside China. So in my first part, I want to ask myself, so why do businessmen convert themselves to Protestantism in mainland China? So I take the example of Rachel Ma. So she's a Hong Kong businesswoman. So she's at the head of a Hong Kong company that has a factory in Shenzhen. So a lot of businessmen from Hong Kong, because the cost of the workforce in Shenzhen is cheaper, they will relocate their factory in Shenzhen. So here she says why she committed herself to God. So she says, after my baptism, I progressively understood what God wanted me to do by participating in a Protestant businessman fellowship at the church. I understood that faith was not only based on going to church, but that in all parts of my life, being those of my family, the marketplace, or evangelization, I need to live out my faith. This is the second step, that of understanding that one day we will die on earth. The third step is that today, all that I do is to prepare the judgment of God that will happen in eternity. I am willing to follow the Lord when He asks me to sacrifice my money. So we can see that Rachel Ma has a really lively and active understanding of her faith. So she says that she wants to live out her faith. So for her, faith, it's not only going to the Sunday service and be passive, but every day in her everyday life, from her family to the way she managed her business, she needs to be faithful Protestant. So that's why she applies very strict moral values when doing business. So she says she's even willing to sacrifice her money for the Lord. And another important point is that for evangelicals, the apocalypse is very important. So Rachel Ma believes in the apocalypse, and for her, it will be followed by the return of Jesus Christ to reign on earth as a king. And in order for the apocalypse to happen, you have to convert the whole humanity. So it means that they are very actively converting people for this utopian end to happen. So another example is the one of the head Ku, which is at the head of a factory of solar panels in Shenzhen. So he says God has to elect some people to testify for him. So when I believed in God, my heart was moved. I went to Shenzhen to try my luck. I didn't go to university. I didn't have the Shenzhen residence permit, but I knew that God was with me and that some years later I will have everything. 20 years later, I have received many goods. My experience with God is authentic. Now I possess 1 house, 3 estates, 2 residences, and 1 Mercedes. So we can see here that this boss has a very pragmatic understanding of his success story and what role God has played in his success story. So it's a really spectacular transformation from an entrepreneur who was who is built from scratch. So he began with nothing. He didn't go to the university, but he became very successful. And for him, it's because of God. So from there on, he can become a model to convert other people. So he says here that God has elected him to be a testimony for others. So other people will find him attractive because of his success and will thus want to be converted. So now I would like to ask how did Protestant businessmen fellowship were imported in Chinese cities? So Protestant businessmen fellowships emerged in the United States in the 1960s. So I have mentioned the example of Rachel Ma before. Her husband is the chairman of the Hong Kong branch of this businessman fellowship. And Rachel Ma is herself leading businessman Protestant fellowship in Shenzhen. So we can see here that the economic investment of the couple from across Shenzhen and Hong Kong is following also their religious investments. So first, Rachel Ma built some underground businessman fellowships in Shenzhen. So she used some techniques to circumvent the ban on foreign evangelization in China. So first, she registered her underground businessman fellowship as a business association. So it doesn't appear as a religious association. And she never mentions the Protestant name of the foreign organization behind this organization. So we can see that also businessmen have more facility to hide their religious practices in China. And from there on, she imported this business practices inside also the state churches of China. So she has built a lot of relationships with pastors of 3 state churches in Shenzhen, and she has contributed to the creation of businessman Protestant fellowship in the state-led churches of this city, which is not so evident because it's very little communities that are very free. So usually the state-led churches will be very cautious about them. So, yes. So we have also a prominent figure of the creation of this businessman fellowship, which is Zhao Xiao. So Zhao Xiao, he is the former secretary of the Prime Minister Wen Jiabao. So he's also a famous economist in China. So he's one of the most well-known Protestants in China. So during a trip in the United States, in the course of which he converted himself to Protestantism, he became convinced that Protestantism is at the origin of the United States prosperity. So he wants the same to happen in China. And according to him, China will experience in 2030 a revolution of the cross. He also wants to convert Chinese politicians to Protestantism. And for him, the formation of entrepreneurs is thus a way to hasten the conversion of elites to Protestantism. So I want to conclude this first part by asking what is the quantity of these groups in China. So up to this day, there is no survey done on these groups in China, but their influence is confirmed when in 2013, the economic magazine Caixin, which is one of the most read journals in China, has published a complete issue on this topic. So the following map established by the Protestant economist Zhao Xiao, so I have mentioned him before, also reveals the concentration of these groups in Chinese coastal cities. So which are the most prosperous cities, and also they have the most link with transnational businessmen from Taiwan and Hong Kong. So we can see also that this spread is due to the more relaxed political environment of the coastal cities in China. So for example, in Shenzhen, we have seen that businessmen communities were accepted by the state-led churches, but it's different in the case of Beijing. So in Beijing, in 2010, there was a businessman fellowship community created in one of the state-led church, which could reunite more than 400 people, and it led to political restrictions. So within this businessman fellowship, the businessmen are trained to learn moral values. So, for example, in one businessman Protestant community of Shenzhen, the leader of this group urges entrepreneurs to be fair toward their employees. So he criticized the 996 method, which is a controversial management style supported by the billionaire Jack Ma. So Jack Ma is the founder of Alibaba. This mode of management refers to the practice of imposing to employees a workplace from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days per week. So it's very controversial, and the leader of the community expresses his view on this management style. So he says, the 996 method should not harm the health of employees in order to respect the company's goal. Each of your employees is a precious treasure sent by God. You should bring them toward God through your acts. When we take care of our employee, we should seek justice and compassion, which are a sign of divine benediction. So in the Chinese Protestant communities, teachings insist upon an ethical management of business. So the Protestant economist Zhao Xiao states 10 commandments for business people, including the prohibition to mistreat employees, the prohibition to have a mistress, and also the need to have filial piety to one parent. So we see that there's a mixture of precepts taken from Confucianism and Christianity. By becoming good managers, businessmen are incited to evangelize workers in their company. So it's a concept of business as mission, a concept invented by American theologians that aim at extending proselytism outside of the churches to the marketplace. So in the third part, I want to tackle the issue of spreading the gospel in the factory. So it is illegal in China to spread the gospel outside of the churches. However, companies are not supervised by the Religious Affairs Bureau, which supervises the Chinese churches, and usually remain unchecked by religious authorities. So in the solar panel company factory of Bosku, workers are highly incited to participate weekly in morning prayer sessions, which seem to be the main religious activity provided by the company for their employees. So in order to incite them to participate on their own will, employees are paid in extra hours. So it is a common practice in Protestant companies. But inside this factory, Protestant activities such as the study of the Bible or evangelization dinners are reserved to the leaders of the factory. And they constitute privileges. So it corresponds to a vertical spreading of the gospel. For Mr. Ku, teaching religious values to leaders is a way to lead them themselves to spread the gospel to the workers. So it shows the tension between the need to spread the gospel to everyone and the hierarchy inside the company. So workers in the factory are often migrants coming from the Chinese countryside. They are often viewed in a condescending ways by the leader, the head of the companies. So, for example, Rachel Ma complains on the lack of quality of migrant workers coming from the countryside. So she says, many people behave like peasants in Chinese churches. They have bad habits, hygiene problems, and they spit everywhere. In Chinese cities, people do not spit like this. So the concept of quality, so in Chinese it's 素质, it comes from Darwinist discourses in the 20th century China, which make a difference between people who have this quality and the others. So facing the lack of 素质 of migrant workers, head of companies usually adopt a paternalist approach when they evangelize them. So for example, a CEO of a ready-made clothes factory I interviewed explained to me, it is difficult to spread the gospel in company because I am the CEO, and some employees might consider it as coercive for me to evangelize them. But sometimes we have to be like their parents. It is natural to be strict when we take care of our children. We do that for their own good because the gospel can bring happiness, and we spread it in a selfless way. We obey to the order of God, who told us to spread the gospel in order to extend his kingdom. So this can lead to some coercive evangelization practices. So the boss Ku has said to me that he has used some before and now he regrets them. So he said, before I used to gather my employees every Sunday to spread the gospel to them. When I acted like this, many people accused me of not respecting their will. One Sunday, I locked them in the factory to spread the gospel. One woman began to hit the door while shouting, I want to go out. She even complained to my shareholders. I told her, stop making a fuss, I didn't behave badly. I only want to make you believe in God. Later, you will know that I did this for your own good. Even until now, I am convinced I did a good thing. This person received the baptism afterwards and she became a Protestant. So we can see here that he regrets his past act, but the fact that she became a Protestant later kind of justify it. So lastly, in the factory, the employees are also taught moral values by the boss. So I have mentioned before that during the Protestant fellowship gatherings, the head of the companies are taught to be compassionate toward their employees. So the boss Ku had said to me that only 50% of his employees are covered by the company's insurance, which is actually an obligation from the state. So he underlines, however, that he gives an annual bonus to his employees. So it's an action that he accomplishes because of his personal faith. So in order to educate his employees, he also teaches them Christian moral values. The objective is to transform them into good employees. So the company advocates a mix of Christian values such as honesty and justice, and also a business ethic, so an accent put on work, and also Buddhist principles. So this boss also uses management system theorized by a Japanese Buddhist entrepreneur. So this fusion between different moral principles aim at reinforcing the discipline of the employees. So they are told that they should not commit excess and they should not set their sights too high. So during the Christian choral proposed by the company, the leaders of the company also have to pray for the company and for their boss. So they say, we have to thank God because he has brought us here to work in this company. He has brought us here so that we could listen to the gospel and follow the right path. Amen. We thank God to have given us such a good opportunity. As a group of people without resources, we have the chance to receive an education by learning song of praise. So here it's pictures I have taken in this factory, so you can see the employees singing during the choral sessions, and also the 10 Commandments, a poster of the 10 Commandments on the walls of the factory. So to conclude, in China, this is a really common social practice to have some religious practices in factories. So it's also very common in Confucian communities, for example. And also it's something also going on in other contexts. So for example, in Africa, there is also Protestant businessmen who have built some Protestant fellowship. And there's also a very strong link between proselytism and business. Okay, thank you.